And this is the charge against the Church of Scientology here for illegally practicing as pharmacists. It's a rather interesting charge because pharmacists here oppose the Church of Scientology, which regards drugs for mental illness in particular as very dangerous. Rick Ross, if you had a comment there, do go ahead, because I think it's the same case in the United States, but the French have taken it far more seriously than the U.S. authorities have.
Well, I think what they're referring to is what's called the purification rundown, in part, in which a person is involved in a regimen of saunas, high doses of niacin, and also ingesting, if you will, vegetable oil. L. Ron Hubbard, who was not a doctor, a pharmacist, or really qualified in those areas at all, contrived this to purify the body, supposedly, of toxins that he claimed indefinitely resided in the fatty tissues of the body and needed to be purged in this way. Celebrities like Tom Cruise, Katie Holmes, and others have gone through the purification rundown. But when medical doctors have explored this, they've found out that, one, toxins or drugs do leave the body and are dispelled, and that basic belief that Hubbard proposed is false, and also that large doses of niacin can damage the liver. And there have been claims that people have been damaged by the purification rundown. And another issue that's very important is that Scientologists are in a kind of war against psychiatry. And part of that war is to keep their members from using any drugs that would be prescribed by a pharmacist. For example, a young man in Buffalo, New York, killed his mother. He later was diagnosed as schizophrenic, and in his 20s he became quite violent. He could have benefited from psychiatry, from psychiatric drugs, but because his parents were Scientologists, he was not allowed that possibility. And it ended in tragedy, and he's now in a prison facility for the criminally insane.
Okay, but I mean, under the rules of religion, they are entitled to hold such beliefs. I mean, look at Christian Scientists that deny chemical medical care and from many of it.
This has become a very controversial issue in the United States. Right now there are a number of trials ongoing across the country in which parents who have withheld medical care from their children, resulting in their death or extreme disability, are being tried and convicted on charges of medical neglect and manslaughter. So Christian Science and other groups that have routinely withheld medical care from their children are going to court. And what in the United States is being determined is that parents have a right to their faith, but children have a right to their life. And parents may not make those decisions that result in the death of a child.
Okay, go ahead, Jacques.
Yes, it's not only the scientists, the Scientologists who can be blamed for that. Because if you look at the Témoin Jehovah, which is a witness of Jehovah, when they say you should not have blood transfusion, then you are breaking the law and you can put into danger the child's or even a person's life, So, in fact, we are facing today a very delicate question of those so-called alternative medicine, which sometimes put into in danger by certain belief the life of people. So what I would say, you can believe in whatever you like. That's not my business. But when you believe in put into action, will put into danger the life of one person, that will prevent him, for instance, not to be cured accordingly medicine to in a cancer case, for instance, they will just have a so-called pill which are inefficient, then you put into danger the lives of those persons, and then you can be prosecuted. And we have a very big problem now in France, in Europe. It's a question that anyone can put a plate on its door and say a therapist and so on, so-called doctor therapist, and not doctor but therapist, and then they will try to have, people coming to them and trying to cure them without any knowledge, you know, and that can be very dangerous.
But I mean, Jens, in the case of Scientology, it's a particularly tough call because the Church's top members swear by these treatments and swear by the miracles that these treatments have provided in their lives.
Well, yes, they do.
Well, but they're
Hold on one second, Ross. I'll come back to you, Rick, and I'll come back to you.
all right.
Swearing that Scientology works is part of the conditioning. It's the first thing you learn. You start with a simple course in communication. It's always the same course. No matter what's wrong with you, you start with a communication course. At the end of it, you cannot pass until you've made up a story about how much better you feel. And then immediately afterwards, after you're better, you have to buy something else. Every time you pass a grade, so-called clear, so-called OT, you have to buy something else. And the more you buy, the more you pass, the more urgent it becomes to buy more. And I say buy because these are so-called donations. There is a price list. The price goes up by a certain percentage, and so on. It's purely a commercial transaction by another name. And it is true that members like to go to the press and praise the results. I would merely suggest that people think back not half a year to John Travolta and his Christmas holiday. His family suffered a terrible tragedy. His son died. And we'll never know how much better off his son would have been with normal care.
Yeah, well, it's hard to speculate on...
It's hard to speculate. It's always sad when someone dies. However, when it's preventable, when the organization tries to stop you taking medicine, say medicine for epilepsy, or it claims to have a cure for your psychological problems. Okay. In France recently, or 2 years ago, Gloria Lopez killed herself, tragically. She was not well, and the Scientology organization extracted, what is it, 200,000 euros, which is a lot of money in anyone's currency. And I'm sure that she wrote a lot of testified to them that she felt better and better and better. But in the end, she died. We'll never know if she'd been better off with more orthodox
Okay, Rick,
treatment.
go ahead.